Republican parties and stay in the streets and on the picket lines. We need our own party, a fighting labor party. History has shown that the ruling elite will never give up their privileges without a fight. This difficult struggle can only succeed through the tireless efforts of an organized revolutionary party. Recently, Bloomberg and other mayors held conferences on how to coordinate their attacks on OWS and the rest of us, and we must be organized also. Our advantage ultimately is that we outnumber them, and they're always aware of that. We can simply walk off our jobs, just like transit workers did in 2005, and shut down Wall Street and the system as well. So, where is the U.S. workers' movement headed today? What's the relationship between the OAS and labor? Well, we're just crawling out of a long sleep. A revived sense of labor's power began with the Public Workers' Rebellion in Madison, Wisconsin, earlier this year. The workers faced massive cuts, but also the loss of their collective bargaining rights that was won over decades. Hundreds of public union folks and supporters surrounded the Madison City Hall and took it over. It was a magnificent sight. It didn't even look like the U.S. Signs went up that were amazing. Quote, "Learn to speak Egyptian," I remember. It must be added that the bold tactics of the Chicago windows occupation a year or two before, led mostly by immigrant workers, helped light Madison's flame. And I would also argue that the huge immigrant workers' strike in 2006 also played a part. Anyway, Madison's flame was soon extinguished by the labor leadership tied to the Democratic Party, who actually agreed to roll over and accept massive cutbacks in exchange for keeping their bargaining rights, in other words, their fat paychecks. The occupiers in Madison were soon urged to go home and ring doorbells for the Democrats. The entire initiative, the entire thrust of the movement was derailed and destroyed, as it always is by these bureaucrats. Nevertheless, the AFL-CIO has gotten on board with OWS, and that's a tremendous development. It's been supporting OWS rallies all over, but until a genuine rank-and-file class struggle wing can be built, union struggles will be derailed into the historic dead end of the Democratic Party. Fortunately, OWS has been played ball, and those opportunist labor leaders will have a hard time turning it around. OWS enabled labor leaders, bankrupt of ideas, and always beating a retreat, to take a few tentative baby steps in the direction of mobilizing, if for nothing else, then again, saving their jobs and their paychecks. It's up to us, and in New York, I'm part of the OWS Labor Outreach Committee, to stir the pot of rebellion, pushing leaders while working with them where we can. In my opinion, after the ruling class attack on Liberty Park, the call by some to join the electoral game may become even stronger. To live, OWS must stay in the streets. For labor to live, we must stay in the streets. What the crisis is about is a crisis of capitalist profitability. A decades-long dogfight over shrinking profit margins has led to an overload of concentrated capital in few places to invest. A new form of Wall Street profit-making has taken over the last couple of decades, known basically as derivatives. It is not based on actual production and real values, but a synthesized guess at values based on what are essentially a bunch of lies, spun at the roulette table. These rating agencies, some of the books that I show here that would urge people to read, document all of this, and they come out quite clearly that, you know, under pressure just to keep their job, they would rate bonds higher. It's all a scam. The whole thing, top to bottom, is a scam. Basically, the world has become a vast Ponzi scheme, a la the Bernie Madoffs. Most of the too-big-to-fail banks went down, and we forked over upwards of $16 trillion to save their butts. The Fed and state governments, shorted by hundreds of billions during the crisis, aided by gigantic tax loopholes for the rich, are making us pay the price. The attacks on the U.S. workers have always been strictly bipartisan. The cuts really began with Jimmy Carter's attacks on auto workers, attacks which were greatly accelerated under Ronald Reagan. That drive was continued by Bush 1 and 2 and by Bill Clinton. It's the record. Bill Clinton cut $1 trillion in social spending, more than Reagan. Obama bragged that he's cut more in spending, mostly on public services, than any other president, making him worse than Bush 2. If he's lying about it, I don't believe he is. He's telling the truth about that one. Obama, who received more Wall Street campaign dollars from Wall Street than his Republican rival, voted for the Bush bank bailout of $1 trillion, well, it wasn't quite that. Yeah, $1 trillion, and when he got into the White House, followed suit with his own huge bailout. And I would also say that Obama got more from Goldman Sachs, the super crooks, than any of the two candidates, either of the two candidates. The current super committee, quote unquote, commissioned to agree on revenue increases and trillions in cuts basically collapsed last Friday, as the previous speaker pointed out, with little hope in sight as yet. But what is certain is even more massive attacks on workers, including Social Security, are on the way. No wonder the attacks on OWS are happening right now. No wonder the capitalist press has stepped up its vilification and slander of OWS. It's happening everywhere. A powerful modern workers' movement in Egypt opened the floodgates, as I suggested before. He was a corrupt dictator who received $60 billion to play patsy for the crimes of neighboring apartheid Israel, fell to a mass movement of mostly workers. This wasn't supposed to happen at all. Tunisian workers soon exploded, also doing the impossible. And other people, the Palestinian people, who have not been given enough credit in all of this, have held high the banner of resistance for over 50 years in the face of impossible odds and treacherous leaders. Quicker than the flat-footed Bushites, the butchers of Iraq and Afghanistan, Obama has applied the lessons of imperialist cooptation to derail the Libyan rebellion and install a puppet as U.S. drones fall on Afghanistan, Pakistan, and who knows how many African states. Socialists say U.S. out of Iraq, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, hands off Iran, U.S. out of the Middle East, end all U.S.